In this video, we're going to learn how to use the communication system in the OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior from Polychop. The footage used in this video is pre-release software and is intended for promotion and training purposes. Its visual and audio qualities may not represent the final product. Alright guys, welcome aboard the OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior from Polychop for DCS World. Today we're going to take a look at the communications in the Kiowa Warrior, how you can talk to your buddies, put some warheads on foreheads. Alright, so first of all, let's take a look at some of the controls that are important for our radios. Up here we can actually see what our radios are programmed into. And look, I'm going to tell you, the radio setup in the Kiowa is far superior to the Apache. I love it to death. The Apache, not so much. Of course, we can change brightness there, no big deal. This is how we change from ciphertext to plain text. We're not going to worry too much about it. But here's our radio. So we've got radio 1, 2, 3. Number 4 is where the HF radio was. We had that removed many moons ago. And in radio 5. So we've got an FM on 1 and 5. A uniform, just remember 2U and 3V. So 2 is our uniform, 3 is our Victor. Typically, a setup would be you would talk to team internal on 1. You would talk to like JTACs or fixed-wing aircraft, particularly on 2, on a uniform freak, tower, other ATC on Victor, and then 5, you'd probably use that to talk to ground forces. So a lot of times the left seater would be up listening to 5 more often and have number 1 turned down a little bit, and then the right seater would have a number 1 turned up quite a bit. So if we look here on the communication control panel, this is our master volume. But this is the volume for each of those radios. If we pull the pin, we can't hear that radio at all, but we can change the volume. So like I was saying, if I was in the right seat, I might have radio 1 turned up quite a bit. I might have radio 5 turned down quite a bit. You don't really want to pull the pins, because if I pull the pin for number 5, I don't know if he's listening to something, because I don't know that somebody's talking to him, and then I start talking to him. It could be, you know, it could be very troublesome, and he's not able to keep track of what's going on. It just kind of creates confusion. So I'd have all those radios on, but I might just turn down the volume. And honestly, in real life, the uniform and Victor have a different sound than the FM, so you can kind of pick out what's going on, but you'll just play around with those volume settings. Here's where we can set our Vox, norm, and just our ICS off, or a hot mic. We're not really going to mess with too much of that. This is the sensitivity for the Vox. And here, this is how we change to different radios. You can see for us, we're going to keep it on remote. Over here for the left seater, he actually has to change the radios. So if you look over here at the display, this arrow is pointing to the left. Guess what? That's the left seater. So I'm going to change to radio 2. We can see that he is up radio 2. All right, if he wants to talk on radio 4, he's going to change over to radio 4. So this is essentially changing which one we're going to transmit on. But for us in the right seat, we're going to keep it on remote because, and this is where the superiority of the Kiowa comes into play over the Apache, this is how we control our radios right here. This is a 5-way switch. So if I press it up towards that 1, 2, it's going to change which radio I'm talking on. Now, I'm not savvy on how to do it with the mouse here, but if I want to talk on 1, there we go. I've clicked it on 1. And if I Z-axis press, it's going to go to the 5th radio. So that's how I change radio. So what's awesome about this is I can be flying along and I want to talk on radio 5 suddenly. I don't even have to look. I can just click it with my thumb. I know which way it's going. And I can, if I really am worried, I can look up here and just verify. In the Apache, you don't really have that level of control. You got to rotate down through the radios. That's just terrible. All right, so left of that, this is how we change our channels. So if I am up radio 1, I can just change the channel 1, but now we want to push to channel 2. All I got to do is hit that again with my thumb, and now we're on channel 2. Now what I can do is mess with frequencies of the keyboard. Typically, you don't do that in the right seat. We'll jump over to the left seat and talk through those buttons here in a second. But first I want to just go to the comm page itself. We can use our display switch on our cyclic and bring that up, or we can just press this button here and we can see that we've got all of our radios. So we can rotate through these radios and it shows us once again who's up what radio, and we just flip through. These are all the preset frequencies on all of these radios. So we'll just mess around with FM1. Q freak, that has to do with frequency hopping. We're not going to worry about that. A manual, that's just something that we're putting in on the fly. And then these are all the presets that we have. All right, so let's say we wanted to delete one of these frequencies. We'll delete number 2. So we're just going to hit delete, 2, enter, and it's deleted that spot. And let's say we wanted to add in a frequency. We'll hit the add button, and we can see that little cursor popping there. So we're going to hit 2. You can see that it's put a 0 there. It already knows that the first digit's going to be a 0. It also is going to put in the decimal for us. So we just need to put in the numbers. We're going to put 315. We can see it's 31.5 here. We can leave the zeros off and hit enter. And now we can name it. So we'll just put in whatever, test, and enter. So now we can add in frequencies based on who we want to talk to. So if we know that we're going to be taking off and talking to particular ATC or a unit, we can actually put in that information there. Now when we're on this page, you're going to see down here changes to control page. We're going to go in there. We're not going to mess with really any of this stuff, but this is how we would change from single channel to frequency hop master. If you know anything about frequency hop, one radio needs to be the master, kind of keep everything on time. Emergency transmit receive, that just changes it to sort of a guard frequency. We can change the power output, basically the power amp. We can turn the squelch on and off. I'm not even sure what OSE means, but we're not going to touch it. All right, so we're going to go back to here. If we go to UHF, once again, control page, there's going to be some different things here. This is have quick and have quick 2. This is essentially secure comms for the UHF. We're not going to dig into that. Time of day control goes into that. So all these things are sort of related to all that stuff. We don't need to worry about that. And then same for VHF. It's going to have its own sort of things here for transmit, receive, emergency transmit, and so on and so forth. All right, back on the main comms page, this is our transponder information. We've got it on, everything's on. So these are the mode 1, 2, 3, 3 alpha, and mode 4. All these codes are on. This is where the codes are actually shown. We're not going to worry too much about how this works. I'm not sure how this is even modeled within DCS, so we'll just ignore it. Go to page 2. There's just some tests we can run to just make sure that everything's working. Again, not a big deal. And then page 3, a bunch of other weird stuff that we're not going to worry about because we're just trying to get things set up. Let's jump over to the left seat and just take a look again at their control panel. So just like we talked about, if we want to talk on radio 3, we're just going to rotate this to 3. And then our push to talk on the cyclic for the Kiowa, it's actually the trigger. All right, so when we talk, we're actually using that trigger switch, and the weapons fire switch is back here. So the trigger is a 2-stage trigger. The first stage would be our ICS if we're not using Vox, and the second stage is actually the radio. So that's the same here, the same cyclic. But what we're going to talk about over here is this little panel right here, this little 4-way switch. Just like we have on the collective, we can change the frequencies by pressing up and down. We can see we can rotate through whatever radio we have on. If we go down and go back down through the list, frequency I don't think is working properly. According to the book, it says if you're on the comm page, it should bring up the list of frequencies. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I ever push that button in real life because I don't know that it actually does anything. So I'm not sure if it's modeled the way it's supposed to be or what. But if you need to see the frequencies, you just press the comms page, pick whichever radio you want, you're going to bring those up. But the left one used quite a bit in the left seat if you're on manual. So let me go to radio 2. So radio 2, we're on manual freak. Okay, so this is how we can change things real quickly. And all we're going to do is, if we've got this up manual and we want to change that to a frequency, let's say someone gave us a separate frequency and said we're actually supposed to be on 225.5. All right, we're on manual freak. I'm going to click keyboard. It's going to blank that out. I'm going to put in 2255, hit enter, and now we've manually put that in. So we could go in here and add that frequency if we wanted to, but for just something on the fly, that's a very quick way to put in that frequency. So as you can see, setting up the radios, using the radios is actually pretty simple in the aircraft. Hopefully this was a helpful video. I appreciate you guys watching. Again, as always, a big thank you to YouTube and Patreon members for supporting the channel. Thanks so much to Polychop for creating this awesome module. I've had a lot of fun playing with it. It's been like a trip down memory lane, relearning how to do all this stuff, and I hopefully am doing an okay job sharing it with you guys watching. Thanks a lot again, and we'll talk to you later. Take it easy.